the Deputy Commissioner for Corporate Services, Madam Jane Tupana, the Deputy Commissioner for Operations, Major General David Chilembe, the Assistant Commissioners, as well as the Deputy Assistant Commissioners present, the entire border management community, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Let me start by appreciating members of the media for having honored our invitation to come and participate in this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to table a report on the implementation of the Border Management Authority's 2024 Easter Plan, which ran for a period of 10 days from the 26th of March 2024 to the 4th of April 2024. We are presenting this report during this month of April, at which South Africa is celebrating 30 years since the dawn of democracy. As a country, the celebration in this milestone is prefaced under the theme 30th Years of Democracy, Partnership and Growth. In fact, it is from this thematic posture that the BMA remains aligned to the need for growth and the realization of effective partnership towards the implementation of robust border management initiatives. It is in this celebratory mode of the 20 years of democracy, coupled with 1-year anniversary of the Border Management Authority, that we are presented with an opportunity to reflect on the benefits of moving away from a multi-agency approach to an integrated border management platform under a single command and control. As the BMA, we remain committed to robustly confront the complex challenges associated with border management across all modalities, ranging from sea, land, and air. In the past year, the Border Management Authority successfully integrated all the functions, the staff complement, and the standard operating procedures from the 4 government departments into the BMA as a Schedule 3A public entity. This resulted in the full integration of all immigration specialists from the Department of Home Affairs, the agricultural biosecurity specialists from the Department of Agriculture, port health specialists from the National Department of Health, and environmental biosecurity specialists from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries, and the Environment. To this end, the BMA has taken full control of all immigration, health, agricultural and environmental functions across all ports of entry, with the departments remaining responsible for policy and the development of legislation pertaining to these functions. However, the access control function across the ports of entry remain co-implemented between the border guards as well as members of the South African Police Services due to the capacity challenges confronting the Border Management Authority. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please allow me to present the 2024 report of the BMA's implementation of the Easter Festive Plan, which ran for a period of 10 days. In this period, you will recall that we had extended operating hours at some of the critical ports which do not operate on a 24-hour basis. We also deployed additional 400 junior border guards at some of the critical land ports to assist in the critical role of sanitizing the border environment and ensure the uninterrupted facilitation of the legitimate movement of people and goods across all ports of entry. In the implementation of this plan, we collaborated and coordinated our efforts with a multiplicity of law enforcement authorities, such as the South African Police Service, the South African Revenue Service, the South African National Defence Force, the Cross-Border Road Transport Agency, and other various local traffic authorities across the country. For the first time in this Easter period, the BMA team were joined the BMA teams were joined by officials from the Department of Social Development in order to ensure the effective management in terms of the movement of children across our ports of entry. The implementation of this plan was fairly overseen by members of the Border Technical Committee, who are heads of entities as well as the Director Generals from the relevant government departments, as well as the Inter-Ministerial Consultative Committee on Border Management. On the movement of people, we facilitated about 1,136,250 travelers across our 71 ports of entry in the period of 10 days between Tuesday the 26th of March 2024 to Thursday the 4th of April 2024. Compared to the 2023 Easter period, where we reported having facilitated about 913,859 travelers, we noted an addition of 222,391 more travelers facilitated, registering a 24% increase in traveler volume in 2024. As the norm, OR Tambo International Airport, Libombo Port of Entry to Mozambique, as well as Beitbridge Port of Entry to Zimbabwe remained the top three ports which processed the majority of the travelers in terms of 528,042 travelers. In fact, OR Tambo facilitated the most travelers at 217,855, followed by Libombo at 157,069, and Beitbridge at 153,118 travelers. Further, we observed an increase in the number of holiday makers boarding cruise ships at Cape Town Harbour to various destinations. In facilitating the movements across all our modalities, we processed about 36,675 private vehicles, 1,893 minibus taxis, and about 1,309 buses. In terms of air travel, we processed over 2,621 aircrafts at our various international airports. For the sea modality, we processed about 252 vessels across our seaport, of which 119 were for crew changes through the off-port limit. This has to do with the facilitation of crew changes for vessels that have not docked at the port. During the implementation of this plan on the people movement, we deployed proactive preventative measures for the speedy detection of non-compliances on the set port protocols. For effective plan implementation, we also deployed all members of the respective port management committees in the respective ports of entry in order to ensure the realization of enhanced service delivery. Whilst facilitating the movement of people during the return leg of our plan, which was executed from the 1st to the 4th of April 2024, we had to deal with individuals attempting to subvert our processes and enter the country illegally. So in this period of 10 days, we were able to intercept around 3,841 individuals who were attempting to enter South Africa illegally. Out of this number of intercepted individuals, about 2,403 did not have any documents at all. About 1,019 were refused entry for being undesirable, and about 419 were found inadmissible to enter the country due to various reasons. The majority of those arrested without documents were intercepted at the vulnerable segments of the borderline. They were processed, declared undesirable for 5 years, and were deported. Most of the inadmissible individuals were found with invalid passports, fraudulent visas, or failed to produce relevant documents such as valid yellow fever certificates, especially for those traveling from yellow fever endemic countries. Incrementally, Since the first deployment of the border guards, the BMA has managed to intercept and stop over 281,000 individuals who attempted to enter South Africa illegally. During the 2024 Easter period, we observed a reduction in the number of undocumented and or unaccompanied minors arriving at our port of entry. Despite this positive observation, we, however, on Thursday, the 28th of March 2024, intercepted about 5 children at the Beitbridge port of entry. We handed them to the colleagues from the Department of Social Development, who activated the social workers at Musina. They later engaged their Zimbabwean counterparts and processed the children back to Zimbabwe to be reconciled with their respective families. Another incident involving a child was at Groblersdal Bridge port of entry, where a woman was attempting to exit South Africa to the Democratic Republic of Congo via Botswana. The supposed mother did not have a passport, but only carried an emergency travel document, which was issued by the Embassy of the Democratic Republic of Congo here in Pretoria. The child was completely undocumented. They were both handed over to the colleagues of the Department of Social Development, who processed and took them to the place of safety within the Limpopo province. Despite the reduction in the number of conveyancers ferrying illegal migrants, 8 penalties were issued to some bus companies found transporting illegal migrants in various ports of entry to the value of 270,000 rands. At this point, we would like to send a stern warning to all conveyancers to desist from transporting illegal migrants in and out of South Africa. On the protection of South Africa from agricultural and environmental biosecurity threats, we managed to intercept and deny entry of about 7 cargo consignments of meat worth about 9,294,551, which were destined for entering South Africa through the port of Cape Town due to non-compliance. Further, the border guards seized about 748 kgs of non-compliant regulated agricultural products at various ports of entry. To this end, we need to emphasize that the importation and or exportation of plants and or animals and or their respective product is highly regulated and requires the requisite veterinary and or phytosanitary certification issued by the relevant government departments to be presented to border officials at the port of entry. In fact, the BMA is mandated to regulate the importation and exportation of agricultural products at the port of entry as guided by various pieces of legislation and international agreements. On the protection of South Africa from infectious and communicable diseases, the port health specialists continue to intensify their screening work across all ports of entry. To this end, the screening of travelers were conducted, including the execution of control measures for the management of cholera challenges. In this period of 10 days, our team of health specialists screened about 91,743 travelers across our ports of entry for various infectious and or communicable diseases. In their law enforcement work, the health specialists seized about in this period of 10 days, our team of health specialists screened about 91,743 travelers across our ports of entry for various infectious and or communicable diseases. In their law enforcement work, the health specialists seized about 120 tablets, 57,658 mg of medication, 59,530 ml of cosmetics, and about 50 insulin injections, which were destined to illegally enter South Africa. The seized products were handed over to the relevant authorities for their further processing and subsequent destruction. On general law enforcement matters, the border guards, working with other law enforcement authorities, continue to safeguard the South African communities by intercepting prohibited items and arresting those involved in cross-border crimes. This is done through the rigorous inspection and searches of personal luggages, light vehicles, and other conveyances, including trucks. During this Easter period, the border guards, working with members of the SAPS, arrested about 143 individuals for committing various types of crimes and transgressions within the port of entry and the border law enforcement area. The majority of these individuals served as facilitators of illegal activities around the port of entry and were therefore charged for aiding and abetting. Interestingly, one individual was arrested at Libombo port of entry to Mozambique while in possession of 13 passports, attempting to bribe an immigration specialist with some bank notes which were placed in between the pages of the individual passports. Further, about 641 kg of dacha to the value of 2,602,500 was seized and destroyed in both Groblersbridge port of entry to Botswana as well as Caledonspoort port of entry to Lesotho. Another joint law enforcement operation by officials of the South African Police Services, South African Revenue Authority, as well as the Border Management Authority intercepted about 217 master cases of counterfeit cigarettes with the value of 3,351,690 at the Libombo port of entry from Mozambique en route to South Africa. These cases of cigarettes were found hidden in the tomato crates in a covered false compartment on a truck. Other interceptions include 573 items of counterfeit alcohol, 272 pairs of counterfeit clothing, as well as parts of a Toyota Hilux 4x4 worth 150,000. Regarding the BMA's contribution to tourism in South Africa, on the 27th of March 2024, the port of Saldanha for the first time received a cruise liner named Silver Cloud from Nassau in the Bahamas, carrying about 227 passengers who were successfully processed by our immigration specialist to enter South Africa and explore our west coast as an emerging tourist attraction. Further, on the 12th of April 2024, the Port of Cape Town received and processed a number of passengers from some of the biggest international cruise liners, being the Queen Victoria, which had about 1,808 passengers and 974 crew members, as well as Queen Elizabeth II, which had about 2,340 passengers and 1,241 crew members. All travelers and crew members were processed accordingly without any kind of glitch. In fact, it should be mentioned that was the first time ever that the Port of Cape Town had to host both Queen cruise liners at the same time. Considering the critical success factors, we would like to indicate that the success of this Easter operation can be attributed to the consistent implementation of all proactive measures, and those include effective corridor management, which was done with full collaboration with the respective local traffic authorities. As such, none of our key arteries leading to any of the land ports of entry experience any kind of congestion. Therefore, we would like to appreciate all motorists for observing the traffic laws and adhering to the instruction of the traffic authorities. Further credit can be attributed to the seamless processing of all travelers within the port of entry, coupled with the effective implementation of intensive joint operations with other law enforcement authorities, including sustained collaboration with our immediate neighboring countries. Additionally, the implementation of well-planned joint law enforcement operations between the South African authorities and our Zimbabwean counterpart led to the destruction of a well-constructed bridge across the Limpopo River, which was used for the smuggling of illicit goods between the two countries. Further work continues to be done with members of the South African National Defence Force to identify emerging vulnerable segments at the borderline, which requires the static deployment of the border guards to curb the spread of illegal migration. With the intensification of law enforcement operations at the various ports, we have noted the reduction in the movement of illegal migrants at the country's port environment. However, we remain vigilant as we continue to deal with this scourge of illegal migration into South Africa. In conclusion, we would like to applaud our team at Stockport Port of Entry for processing and competently recording the requisite data of all passengers who were on a bus which was from Botswana en route to Muria in Limpopo province for the Easter pilgrimage. We appreciate their speedy retrieval and submission of the passenger manifest data to the Limpopo Departments of Transport as well as the Department of Health, as they required that information to assist them in the identification of the victims. As the Border Management Authority, we had conveyed our condolences to the families of the deceased, and the government of Botswana. Lastly, despite our limited resources, our officers continue to work tirelessly to ensure the smooth flow of legitimate travelers whilst upholding the highest security standards. We are extremely proud and appreciate all of the resilience of our border officials in rendering a stable service in very difficult conditions. As we continue to do this work, we do believe that South Africa will rally behind us and assist us to improve on our capacity and enroll requisite technologies required for effective border management. We thank you.